episode 287 this week with famed, legendary Florida Mayhem general manager. Yeah, welcome to the show for, I think, is this a third appearance? Fourth?
I don't know.
It
We're gonna be double digits.
It might
be
fourth. Yeah.
I think we're getting up there. Definitely a fan favorite. Definitely somebody who brings quite a bit of insight. Thank you for coming on, and an exciting time for the at least the North American half of the Overwatch League, right?
Yeah, it's kind of the calm before the storm over here. I think everyone's getting their players in from overseas and setting up the facility, and yeah, getting ready for the pro-am.
So spicy time. Yiska, how are we feeling? Is it calm? Do we got our everything bat down? No hurricanes coming to tear you up?
No, and I'll tell you straight up, it feels like a lot calm. Like I'm a little asleep.
Like a true Floridian. You're just like, nah, hurricanes. Nah, we'll go surfing in the park. It's no big deal.
Like I understand, although I think basically we're in a situation where when I complain about the season format, which I will definitely still do, okay?
Mm-hmm. Of course you will.
It's like going to the doctor saying everything hurts and the finger is broken, and our finger is just resources, right? Like everything that's lacking is resources. Therefore, like you can't really complain. So, but yeah, I think the Pro-Am as a concept is sweet. A little disappointed by the best of 3 in group stages, but I guess like it makes a lot of sense in how it had to shape.
It's like the equivalent of going to the school nurse with like a serious ailment. It's like, okay, well, they don't really have, it's like it is what it is, like take some Pepto-Bismol and like take some Advil and like figure it out.
Yeah. I got
Damn, I'm missing half my leg. Do you have a tourniquet? I have dinosaur band-aids.
Yeah. Here's an ice pack, just put some ice on it and
you go walk it off. You'll be right. You'll be good. You'll be good.
Look,
however, before we get into the Pro-Am, before we dive, the German gets on his bike on, why, bureaucracy and other large words that have lots of meaning. I
actually wanted to share something positive, but now you missed the window. No, nope.
Okay, fine. No positivity. I'll hold that out. Comment section, YouTube. This is my fault. I'll take that. Before we get into the off season and how that went for the Florida Mayhem as well, and the maybe roster building decisions. We'll see what decides to divulge. We do have to thank our patron producers. So thank you for supporting episode 287 to Battle Crab, Refined Bean, Bronze Bob, Buhau, Picasso, Chris, R34444, Kasha67, Molshin, Porkchop, Sammy, Rexane, Unequaled King, Volamel, Sugar High, I am DRW, Brother Adam L, Sagi Fumi, Ice M Jello, Fire Element 6, AK Chris R. Thank you for supporting the show. And if you can't support us monetarily, go ahead and download the podcast on wherever the heck you get your podcasts at. So yeah, Yiska, positivity, last chance.
Okay, APAC is growing on me.
Right?
Okay.
I think maybe it's more so the theoretical opportunity of producing some content live, offline, and whatnot. I also think some of the teams assembling there is sort of interesting, but mainly also because they can cause upsets to a lot of OWL teams, because those OWL teams are also not that great. But of course, we knew about the Dallas thing for a bit. And that was always going to happen. I mean, I'm interested. People think it's definitely Spark. I'm not sure. I'm not so sure. I don't know. I think you got to give some credits to the 2 of the best coaches still residing now in this region, right? With Rush and Moon. I'll tell you straight up. If Moon can make it far with that roster, then that's definitely a big argument for him to move up. Maybe not in prime position, but move up the ladder points, gain elo points on being the best coach of all time. And the same is true for Rush, right? So, generally speaking, I don't think it's a benefit to play in the worst region, because you just get blown out once you get to international play. But we'll see.
I mean, China finally has their super team.
It's true.
Yeah.
Took 5 years, but we're here. They did it.
It's an exciting time. They look quite deadly per the, some of the leaked scrim codes. Very excited for some of those. It's been an interesting offseason regarding those.
It's gonna be an end. There's no more.
Right. Everybody's on OPR. There's no more.
Unless you have an OPR account, you're
right.
Those scrim codes aren't going to do anything for you anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, this kind of opens up a little bit of a can of worms from like a GM's perspective. Is there anything there or anything from this like weird, flash in the pan when it comes to like all of these like leaked scrim codes that you look at it from like maybe even a business perspective, like, okay, like, is there something that maybe we could tap into to, either, feature some preseason content, maybe perform exhibitions against other teams that, want to compete. I know that, maybe there was some stirs, earlier on in the preseason. Is there anything there that you think you could tap into?
I mean, sure. I mean, I think it's just the current situation is like, ideally from a competitive standpoint, you want like 0 leaks, right?
Of course.
Once the first leak gets out, the leak's usually going to be a leak where your team looks bad,
Yeah.
Like no one's going to leak like, oh wow, we got blasted by like Florida. Like here's the scrim code of us getting blasted by Florida. It's like nobody's going to do that. They're like, oh, this is us, or this is like the 1 or 2 maps, or like this is when we did good against Florida or whoever, right? Like this is a good block. And so that basically then causes the team on the receiving end to be like, okay, well, here's the rest of the scrim. If they did well that scrim, like here's the rest of the scrim, like, or oh, here's us. Maybe they can't beat that team. Maybe they're just okay. Well, we look terrible right now, so like we got to put the players accidentally leak a scrim code of them doing well against some other team, right? And it's like kind of like a domino effect.
A little bit of a rat race,
right? Yeah, because like no one wants to be, like obviously there's been a lot of like memes on Eternal whatever, and they've because they've had some few leaked scrim codes, and some of them are, some of the players or some of the plays are like quite bad, right? And it's like they don't, they're on their side, they're like, okay, well, surely they have a few good scrims, right? Like they're gonna be looking to leak, and it just keeps going, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it's just a diversion because like, or distraction because like the offseason's been kind of slow, and
course,
like nobody knows anything, and like people have ideas. Like there's rosters that haven't been announced yet, so like people are just getting antsy right before the program. I think is all. And then players having a little fun with it. Like I think who did the counter leak? Was it Toronto or something like counter? here's the counter leak. Like here's a few maps where like we're doing well. It's like it's just I think it's all in good fun. I mean, end of the day, doesn't the current leak codes don't really matter as much because it's going to be a different patch by the time the real the real matches start, and like the actual scrims that like, oh, you might leak a strat. Now it's just like, okay, we got like subs, maybe we got people, figuring out their role within the team, figuring out hero pools, like what is our team color? Like it's all, it's like you went to it's like you leaked an internal practice for the NBA or something. It's like, okay, cool. Like your favorite player, like they got, maybe they got shit on randomly like in a scrimmage. Happens, right? And I think it's just interesting from public, like there's make a lot out of nothing. Like I see, every team loses in scrims, like at some point. You can't. It's very hard to have just like you're just doing well every scrim. Like it's not possible. Like every decision's great. It takes a lot of like. You have to be really, really good. You have to be so much better than the other team. Like just like even on your worst days, you're still beating them, right? That level. So I just think it's funny watching the public trying to like digest it and be like, oh, like what's that meme where they're just like on the crack pipe, like, oh, scrim code. Like, that's literally them right now. But it's fine. I get it. But hopefully, with the program coming out, there'll be, I don't know about matches with action, but like officials, where we'll be able to see, all that in action. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter who wins in scrims. It matters, who wins the match. So
everybody who shows up.
Dude, the fucked up thing about this is, right? If you had to like forced every team to submit 5 codes and put them on the official Overwatch League website, nobody would fucking care. It is like it is all about like
the drama.
The snake like offering the forbidden apple, right?
Yeah.
Like if it wasn't anything like secretive that others don't want out there, then nobody would give a fuck, right?
Sure.
And of course, at least half of them were just also deliberate. Even the ones that look accidental are also just like hard forced, right?
Yeah.
Like they don't give a hoot at this point, just because like there's literally a new hero between the season start and this meta, right? So
yeah,
of course, like like this season rollout has made it hard to see the value in doing the Scrimbux stuff. You know, like it's basically like.
Are you a little biased there? A little pain point there? The stock exchange feeling a little crash?
Look, it's it was a hard hit for the markets.
Yeah. Are you filing Chapter 13 SVB style, or what's going on?
I don't know. Like they basically put that shit on the blockchain and it was over for the.
I mean, you also don't know how old some of these Scrim codes are. It could be
true, right?
Like, okay, Glad's lost to Scrim. They could be a much better team now than they were 2 weeks ago, right? Like, you got people playing on 200 ping. They're in the States now. Like, everyone's starting. I think probably some teams might still have one or two players or some players out of the country during the program as well. So it's like, who really, like, it doesn't really matter. It's just, I think it's just good fun. Players just running with it. I don't think there's any like at least I haven't seen anyone like, oh hey, like, don't you dare leak like our Scrim codes, or just like it's like that's whatever. Like I think the players understand what the limits are.
Yeah.
And they're just having fun with it for now.
Yeah.
Oh, definitely. Obviously, Pro-Am's coming up. But this has been, I think to say this has been a turbulent offseason would probably be the understatement of the year. I don't think I need to explain that to you, but to the public, maybe we forgot at how many times we delayed the signing window and how many times, GMs had to, put off their holiday plans. And, so from a public's perspective, I think, again, like that goes under the radar. Obviously, I think you made some public tweets about, your frustrations with, some of those delays. So from, boots on the ground in the trenches, what was that really like?
I mean, I went to Korea to vacation originally, and I just ended up, I mean, not that I didn't have a great time. I had a great time at Seth's wedding, but during that time, I'm like on my phone, on my laptop, like DMing players, like, hey, like, like negotiating, like thinking like I had to get all this done. And the reality was like I had like an extra month. I'm just like, okay, well, now it just feels like I could just let myself go, like not worried about it. It would have been nice to know ahead of time. Because I thought that timeline was much faster and to work faster and like be done. But is what it is. Had a good off season. Despite that, a little, had to clench my cheeks a little bit for like the month. Like, okay, maybe someone swoops in, right? Like we got some really good players, right? So it's like, like things change. The more time there is to give them like a month, and it's like, oh, here's another extension. It's like, okay, someone, making sure like, hey, you're still going to sign with us. Like you're still happy. Nobody's trying to come swoop in or make a play for one of the free agents we're looking at. So
I will. Can I just jump in real quick? That absolutely happened as well. Like in a universe where if you believe in the butterfly effect of like one big signing moving a ton of other signings around, right? Which I think is pretty plausible, right? Like,
sure,
if just two banger players end up elsewhere, then that just sets off a chain reaction where, dude, there are some in the off season just goes differently if that window delay doesn't happen like that, right? Like there were some agreements in place that then just were like, beaten. So yeah. I don't know.
I mean, when we get to players like we signed, like I think Merit for one of them was definitely like because of like the turbulent events, we ended up with Merit for sure, like directly. But we can cross that bridge when we get there, unless we want to cross it now.
Sure. I mean, I think there is like an interesting kind of bridge from that question. regarding
Joe, dude, your juice instincts are like not fine-tuned right now.
I don't want to completely jump ahead to like the players themselves. I do, I will pin Merit because there is that I feel the spider senses.
Okay.
I'm with you there.
Right.
My kind of follow-up there is regarding the league and the communication itself, right? I don't know that we can kind of, as a third party, I don't have any, bias. I don't have my, any stake in this as much as, I put my time into it. I want to try to get as much information from, you guys in your positions of power.
Yeah.
So when it comes to, it was the delays. Could that have been remedied in your mind? Could they have approached that in a better situation? God forbid there was a second one. Was there, an open channel of communication between you and maybe, the heads at the Overwatch League? Like, kind of, is there open criticism there that I think is in something that you can kind of speak on?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of understand what they did, but I disagree with the execution of it.
Okay.
Because obviously it was an APAC region problem,
Sure.
right? First and foremost, right? Like there's no, the game's not going to be live in China. Like, so obviously that affects the Chinese teams, right? But then the Chinese teams have a lot of Korean players and then like, it's a trickle down effect. And so obviously their concern was like, okay, the teams operating in APAC, like they're in communication with them, trying to figure out solutions. I don't know what extent, like I wasn't in those conversations because we're in the West. So I don't know what they talked about, what was discussed. But in my eyes, I was like, okay, I know APAC's like in trouble. I just didn't see how extending it like really benefited anybody.
Right.
I mean, I obviously benefited someone, right? I just don't see. I'm talking about like overall benefit of the league as a whole. Like I don't see how that was like a net positive to extend it. And then the way they did it, where like I literally found it on Twitter,
Right.
Not because I think it's just because Twitter's push, like the push notification just faster than Gmail. Because I think technically the tweet that came out before, like at the same time as the email,
Right.
But essentially, to me, like I literally got like a ping. I'm like looking in Korea. I'm like, what? Like, I was like, what? We had the papers ready to go. Every DocuSigns like ready to go out. Everything's buttoned up. Like I'm like, okay, we got our guys. And it's like, okay, just getting like a month. And it's like I don't know initially. It was extended twice, right? But I don't remember if it was a month. I don't remember the exact timeline. I just remember like it was like, okay, at least 2 weeks or something. It's like, okay, why? And it's like, because we got visas to work on. Like it just extended. So it also like the down effect was also it pushed the start date back.
Right.
Because once you push the signings all the way to the end of December, that means the consulate's not starting visas until January. So January, it takes at least 2 months. So January, February, you don't really get your visas until start of March. Like if everything goes smoothly, if there's any, like, thank God we didn't have any problems with visas.
Right. Yeah.
If we had any problems, like our players would not be here right now. Like we wouldn't be able to, like, but luckily we didn't have any problems. Like starting March, like at the Param is like end of March was already like cutting it super, super close. And it's like if you push the signing window earlier, then it's like the majority of players would get their, at least the ones in demand, right? Obviously, there's going to be people signed later in the offseason, depending on the level of demand, needs of the team. But the majority of the league would have been able to be here earlier. Maybe we could have an earlier start time. But yeah, I think that's it's a circle back. Like, yeah, I have some criticism on like the way it was handled, and kind of how obviously how it was communicated. Because I think at least give us some like notice or like because it was just the reasoning wasn't really. It was just like, hey, we're extending the deadline. It's like, okay, APAC region problems. Like, yeah, we already knew APAC region had problems, but like, how does this really like? Who is this helping? Like, what does this solve? Because I think end of the day, it's like, my original thing was like, unless they had a publishing deal in place, and they knew like, okay,
we just need this much time.
All the Chinese teams are back, right? Like they're reinvested in Overwatch, which didn't happen. Like, but I don't know, maybe if they're close, I could understand it. But I don't think I'll ever know the answer to that
Sure. Yeah.
question. If I did know, I wouldn't be able to state it.
Say anyways. Yeah.
for sure. So
it seems
but
pretty.
That's the scenario where I'm like, okay, it gets a little hairy if insiders, they're like, okay, we plan on having a new publisher, like we're gonna fix this deal within a month. Once we fix it, then it would be then it would actually be unfair. If players got signed before they could fix the publishing rights, then yes, I would agree with that decision. But I don't know if that's the case, and I don't think I'll ever know. But from my perspective, I was like, I thought it could be communicated and handled a little better.
Yeah, I think one thing that's probably fair to say is that like the contingency plan probably will also had to be established in terms of like, are you guys coming over to Korea, like that type of stuff, and that might constitute some changes in terms of like what kind of players you want to sign. Because like if you want to go minimum or everything, then you probably want Korean players that play from their mom's bedroom, like to say that in a radical way, right? But I felt, especially because there were some pretty high spending Asian teams in the past, it made some sense. But yeah, to say that there was ever going to be like a short-term resolution plan in place, especially for the second delay, hard one, right? I can only imagine that there probably was a lot of pressure applied behind the scenes that then had to de-escalate. It's totally possible that you need to delay for social reasons, right? Like for tempers to cool and everyone to have the ability to like once again, look at it rationally, right?
From like a corporate standpoint, I feel like it was like, okay, give us that in December. And then if like we can't figure something out, then like sign players. I feel like that's what ended up happening. Like, maybe I don't know how close they were to like an actual resolution, but just feels like, okay, we're gonna arbitrarily decide like end of the year, and then we proceed with whatever we have at that point.
All right, turbo nerd journalism. Interesting off meta stuff out of the way. We do have a team to dissect and kind of pick your brain on, and it sounds like Merit is definitely a touching point. I don't know exactly. I couldn't read the room well enough to know if it was a good thing or a bad thing, but with Yiska underlining me, it sounds like maybe it wasn't the best thing. I don't know.
Gotta find the pulp in the juice sometimes, Joe. Like you gotta.
Apparently,
it was a great thing for us. For where I'm standing at the moment. But I'm not. I don't know which angle Yiska is taking.
No, I'm just wondering. Like, okay, so let me unpack this. Like, in a way where I think fans can sympathize, right? So Merit had a great season. Arguably a season that he was one of the best players on his roll on.
You can just say Sojourn.
Sojourn, yes.
Correct.
That would be the next sentence.
Sojourn wasn't meta the whole year, but
right.
yeah.
Like that's also the question mark because it was only Sojourn. And like there are of course other hit scan players in the game. And the situation, I mean, like I didn't think Houston would even let go of Merit. That was a surprise to me.
Surprising.
But I guess like considering they got happy, I think that there's some domino effect there because that was also an unlikely move for me to happen. For Happy to go back. So yeah, I'm interested if you can fill in some blanks at least how Merit ended up with you guys and not maybe like was it one of those situations where you just had the better entire package because I'm sure you probably didn't have the highest offer for him.
So it wasn't that it was a transfer and then so I guess what happened originally, like every offseason we do like a power rankings, or at least every offseason that I've done, I do a power rankings of every player at every positions. At least ones that we think, even if we don't think we have a shot at getting, just to know like where they rank. So like in the case of, we need to make a decision on, do we think this player is better than this player? We just know. We have a list, right? Like, we've talked about it. We agreed that, like, this is our priority list. Like, this is number 1, number 2, whatever. Merritt's, like, high up on the list, obviously. But he's not a free agent. So we can't reach out, talk to him, right? Gauge his interest. That's in Houston's camp. So we didn't think Merritt was an option. He was rated very high for us for sure. But we just that wasn't on our radar as like a potential option. So we have a list of like, okay, here's all the players that we think are good. And then we have a separate list of like, here's our actual like pool that we're going to be selecting from. Like, here's our shopping list, essentially. Merritt wasn't on that shopping list for obvious reasons. Because
it was a wish list.
We didn't think Houston was going to let him go. And we didn't know he was on the market in the first place. We knew Happy was in the market. So originally, where Happy was one of our targets in the free agent market was it was Happy. It was like Shy. It's like players like that that we talked to, and we're actively talking to, and then I think we were talking to like Happy's agent or whatever, and then like usually in this process, you figure out what other teams are looking at that free agent because that's leverage, right? That's leverage for the player to know like, oh hey, like Houston's, he's been so essentially we found out he like Happy was between us and Houston, like those were his 2 top destinations. And then I was like, Houston, like why? Like, so where's
right?
Where are they keeping Merritt? Like, where's Merritt? Is Merritt going somewhere? Like, we didn't know. And I just get I'm on the plane and like I get a DM like, oh hey, like Merritt, so what happened was Merritt was, I think Houston wanted Happy for sure, and they were going to sell Merritt or transfer him to an APAC team originally, and then obviously I don't know which APAC team. I just know it was allegedly an APAC team is what I was told, and that fell through because like the region kind of imploded.
Right.
I don't know if later down the road that deal would be back on the table or what. Like, I have no idea, but I just know at the time, and I was like, okay. And basically, it's like, okay, so they want essentially, if we get Merritt from Houston, they get Happy, and Happy was between us and you know what I mean. So like, it kind of just worked out in that way where, okay, we get Merritt. We didn't know Merritt was on the table. We're perfectly, we'd love to have Merritt on our team, and Houston get their guy as well. So it's kind of like a win-win for both of us. And so that's essentially what happened with Merritt and how we got him.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Is that kind of along like the lines? Is that the pulp of the juice?
Yeah.
Yiska?
Yeah. I think that. Yeah. I feel like it's interesting to see how sometimes the dominoes fall and how like teams can get to those decisions, right? Like how like there's a lot of like if A then B then C then D. I remember there was like a ridiculous chain. Was it in season 4 maybe? Which one was the Shockwave to Fusion season?
2021. I think.
4? Was that 4?
I think, yeah.
Yeah, whatever that season was, like Shockwave deciding had a long domino chain, right? Like of Nero and then like everyone else, right? So like that sometimes just there are a lot of causal chains in pickups. Yeah. And I feel like this is you're like on top of the food chain, and whatever happened after just like collapsed.
Yeah. It's like Jenga. I feel like you're essentially it's Jenga. It's like you're poking at pieces right in the tower, in the player tower, and you're like seeing what like budges and like, okay, I got our guy, and it's like then it's like you're done. Like, we're done. We got Merritt. Like, we're off. It's like whoever's next, like that's your problem to deal with, like the Jenga tower. Figuring out what piece you want to pull from there. Yeah. And reshuffle.
Yeah.
True.
So yeah, we got, and then it was good because it's very rare that like you have those type of trades because like obviously from like a business perspective and a competitive perspective, Houston could care like generally speaking could care less where Merritt goes, right? If they want Happy and they're just like, okay, whoever gives us like the highest buyout gets Merritt essentially, right? In a normal scenario, but in this scenario, it was like, okay, might as well just, since Happy's deciding between you two and maybe you want Merritt, and then we did, and then that it just kind of worked out that way. But another, like, I don't know in what world if they sold Merritt to an APAC team, like, do we get Happy? Does Houston get Happy? If we don't get Happy and Houston gets Happy, who is our hit scan? You know,
Right.
like who knows, right? Like that's the what if of the at least the hit scan position for us this offseason.
I mean, at least landing like a wish list style player, it's got to, bolster the confidence a little bit, right? I feel like
we
coming
got
into
all
this year.
we got all our guys. I mean, I think it's funny. I have a talk with players like every offseason,
Yeah.
especially the ones that we're gonna keep. Like, hey, like who do you want on the roster? Like, what like making
Mhm.
sure we're aligned or like what's reasonable. And I remember I was talking to Ham or someone, and he was like, Chorong. Obviously, I think most people that follow the league
Sure.
like know Chorong's like super close with someone. So like that was
Okay.
obvious. Like, and then he said like Merritt. Like, I'd really like to play with Merritt if possible. And I was like,
Mm.
I don't, because at the time I was like, this is before everything, like the APAC.
Yeah.
I was like, so you want Merritt and Chorong? Like that sounds like it's like ridiculous, right? It's like
That
I don't
sounds like
know.
a lot of money.
Like, I was like, all right, I'll try. Like, we'll see what we can do. And then like the fact that like it all actually happened, I was like, that's pretty ridiculous that we were able to get those two players. So yeah, I mean, definitely the APAC exploding and like all having less teams for kind of, because like a lot of the Chinese teams had Koreans on there, and just having like less of that. And then also the uncertainty of the region and like the difference in pay probably affected it a lot, and like helped, like opened up the West to more Korean talent that I guess the year before I don't think it would have been available, right? In a normal year.
Okay. I gotta once again look for the pulp. The Chorong pickup, that like he was FA when you guys picked him up, right? Like there was no existing contract.
Yeah. Correct.
I feel like Chorong last year was probably, like, if there was an award for it, he would have won the award for legendary bag getter, right? Like, does that set the expectations of such a player, or was he just like happy to play with the guys you had?
I mean, I think with all bag, okay, so there's people that get the bag early on, and then there's people that get the bag later on.
Yeah.
Right.
I think the players that get the bag first year, like they're just like, okay, well, I got the bag, but like I really want, like they learn faster that there's more to get than just the bag. Whereas I feel like for some players that are just like, okay, I just want the, they get the bag towards the end. Like, okay, I just wanted the bag. Like anywhere I go, just make sure I get the bag, right?
Yeah.
And I think it was like, okay, well, I can play with a friend. It's going to be a good team. And I know a lot of people there, and I think that has some value when the market is very uncertain. Like you kind of like, okay, no matter what, like I'm gonna enjoy my time, and it's like he's not getting. It's not like we're paying him like budget, like he's still getting a decent. It's not what he was getting at Toronto, I'll tell you that. But but the main, honestly, this year, if you look at the offseason, there were a ton of main support for agents. Like,
Sure.
I can't remember the last time there were so many to pick for, like top tier, like really good main support options. Like usually it's one or two. Some years it was just one. It's like, and everyone else is just like average or whoever, or unknowns really. But this is the first offseason I can remember where I was like, okay, I got a menu of like main supports, and I think for a lot of, I guess, Mayhem's time, it's like we haven't had like a marquee main support player, I would say. In their prime, like obviously Slime in his prime versus Slime when we had him, two different, right? Like Onimo, same story, right? Like, but this is the first time like we've had like a main support, and we missed out on Lee Jigon, so like this is like okay, finally, like we got, we don't have like we have a marquee like main support player, so, and I think obviously Charles is our number one option because of his chemistry with someone, and just knowing, like I think he knows Checkmate, he knows Merritt, and I think it's just a good fit overall. But regardless, I think we probably would have been able to find like a not as good as Trong maybe, but like still like a very like above average like main support on the free agent market this offseason. But really, Chorong was our number one choice, and it's just good to get. It was good to get our number one choices at those two positions for sure.
Right.
Again, and the third DPS for sure. Like Sauna was our number one target for the third DPS as well.
That's interesting. Let's put a pin in it. I just want to stay on the main support. Could we talk about the priority list? Because yes, there were a ton. like you already said, Charong was like prime choice, right? It was Vindame, theoretically Chio, theoretically Izayaki. Digigon. Who else was there after that?
And there's a bunch of decent ones. Like Faith was a free agent.
Yep.
Who else? I mean, and then there's also the flex supports that became. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like there's.
Yeah. You could have had Violet, right?
I don't know about that, but there's regardless, there's like you could keep naming like main supports. Whereas before it was like, okay, like I think the year Lijigon came in the league, it was like, okay, we got Lijigon or like nothing.
Yeah.
So it was a year of like a main support surplus. Because I also think because some flex supports have started moving towards main support, there's more of a pool of players to pick from for the main support role. Like you could look for a hard main support play, like main support only, and see if they can flex into the flex heroes, or you can get a flex support that's like looking to, move towards in the twilight of the career, or like they want to make a role swap, right? Like, so I think there's just because of Overwatch 2 and like how that kind of introduced the double flex support that can play, one of the flex supports can play main support concept, that kind of opened the doors a bit in the offseason this year.
Sure, yeah. And the other thing you said was Sauna, and that was what kind of priority choice was that?
Well,
because that's a wild pick, right?
Yeah, at that position. So basically we're like, okay, so our starters, like let's spend, we have a budget, right? So it's like in terms of priority spending, let's make sure we have 5 solid starters. And then whatever we have left, like let's be realistic with a third. Like we don't need, like in terms of priority, it's like you want your solid 5. Like if you're going to prioritize budget,
right?
Spend most of it on your solid 5. On your 6, it's like, it'd be nice to have it'd be nice to have like Boston have like a bunch of all-stars at DPS, right? But you don't, in terms of need, like only 2 of them can ever play at the same time.
Right.
So it was like, okay, let's find a player that we think has a lot of potential, that has the hero pool we're looking for, that can, if they turn out to be really good, they can work their way into the rotation, depending on the comp. So it was going to be, we were looking at flex players that had a tracer, because I think tracer is really important in the third DPS, because usually that's like the stickler. Like when someone's a perma starter, it's usually because they don't have enough tracers, right? And you can't. So Sauna's flexed around. He's played a lot in contenders. Like tracer, he's played like hit scans. He's played projectiles, like all across the board. He's played a lot of the heroes. So we were looking at him, and we're like, okay, he fits the bill. Let's see if he's interested in joining us and joining a mixed roster. And so that's kind of how the thought process went in terms of Sauna.
Sure, yeah. Yeah, no, I think it's an interesting one. Also one that I think a lot of people didn't have on the radar. It's certainly interesting to see like what kind of player profile he has, because like you guys also value mechanics a lot, right? Like if I think back, like the Majet stuff, like maxed out mechanics pretty much, but like there's something for your coaching staff to work with, right? In terms of improvements in positioning and whatnot, right? Like, is that true for Sauna as well? Is he all maxed out mechanics, but like needs a little bit of coaching help?
I don't know if he's, because I think Checkmate was on the other. Well, he's like super maxed out mechanics, and then it was like the team play. I think Sauna's not as maxed out mechanics. Like he has really good mechanics. Don't get me wrong, but like in terms of like it's a scale, right? Like you either
it's
a sliding scale. So I think he has more. I think he could provide us more team play aspects. Than just like, okay, pure, like I don't think he's a pure mechanics player, is what I would say. But I think in terms of overall talent, like Western rookie class, like tracers or flex players, like I think he's top 3, maybe. Has to be, right? Like Western. So like what? It's like Sugar Free, him, and who else would even be
for flex?
Yeah, for like a flex DPS.
Yeah, probably not a lot. Like I think like some people brought up Shockwave, but that hero pool doesn't fit, right? Like
Rookie. Like because we wanted, I think we wanted some. I think we always want to have like at least one rookie or like someone fresh because I think they're the most motivated and it like helps to have like that newbie. Like it just helps to have like a new perspective, like a fresh eyes. In terms of like Owl.
Right.
And I think we have a lot of vets. I mean, it's weird calling second year players vets, but like that's what we are. And, like they're no longer rookies, right? And it's like, so yeah, we wanted a rookie, and we wanted someone with, like other teams might not approach first. Like it's not like I don't think that people were going to approach Sauna as a starter, right? But it was like, okay, this is an interesting like prospect. And that's what we wanted, like someone that could grow into, that can take a starting role maybe, but is not like a shoo-in like initially. So we're looking in that direction, and we saw him, and we're like, okay, I've watched a lot of his games in EU, so it was like when Gunba and Gravy and I talked it over and like brought us in, I was like, oh yeah, like that makes sense. It's like a logical choice for a third DPS to round out our rotation.
Sure.
So it sounds like there is a little bit of like a developmental angle here, right? Where it's like, okay, like we'll see how the season looks.
But I think base level, he has the heroes. I don't know if it's gonna transfer. He's not with us yet. Like he's gonna finish school.
Sure.
And then so like end of the month he'll be here. And so we'll see what happens. Like I don't know what's gonna happen. But I think we've started scrimming with him. And he's looked promising. For sure. So we'll see what happens as the season develops. Also, we wanted a second Tracer player. Like obviously, Checkmate can play a Tracer. But if Checkmate's out, like we need a Tracer player, right? Like we need his replacement or whoever's playing instead of him to have a Tracer. Merritt's not more on the hard hit scan roles, so we need somebody that could fit the flex role more than we needed like a second hit scan or something like that.
Makes sense.
For sure, yeah.
Yiska, you were gonna cut in?
Is what?
No, I think like that it makes sense. The one thing I think you might have explained, but I didn't catch that. Like, why did you want to have someone Western on that position?
I mean, we didn't want it to be like we didn't want RuPaul to be the only Western player on the team as well.
Yeah, makes sense.
It wasn't as big of a factor, but it was part. It's like it's a nice to have. Like,
sure, of course.
Yeah,
makes sense.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, even if you extend that, not sure if there were like super many rookies that are like standing out on Tracer. The one rookie that I'm surprised that wasn't picked up for the flex role, even though I'm not sure about
Top Dragon.
His Tracer is Top Dragon. Yeah. Yep. Did you ever like think about Top Dragon at all?
We thought about it, but then it was like if we're gonna get a player on a visa and like we because we wanted because Sauna speaks English, so it's like it's like if Sauna's in, that affects it, and we're speaking more English, or like if he has like that extra comms to bring, or like that improves our team play a little bit, like that's an angle we can explore. Whereas with Top Dragon, it was like, okay, we already have a starting lineup of 4 Koreans, so
we have Top Dragon at home, Yiska.
No, the thing is, here's the interesting part for me as well. It's like, okay, signing new guys is one thing, but you also got to defend your existing starters. Now, of course, we're kind of in a strange like economic situation, and then the troubles of the league and whatnot. Like, I'm not sure how willing people are to pay buyout fees anyway. But I'm specifically like interested. Did you have to like defend against any, or were there like initial, because when teams approach your starters or your players, they have to go through you first, right? Did you have to fight off some interested parties?
Surprisingly not, but I think it's just because there were so many free agents available this offseason that like if you didn't want to pay like that the amount you paid in buyout, you could you can up a player's salary by that amount and like maybe get the free agent, right? And not to worry about the buyout. And work on your own, like your own contract versus having to inherit another team's contract and those terms. So I think it was more a buyer's market than a seller's market.
True.
This offseason. Like I don't think I don't know the price tags of most of the transfers this season. But I just from my general understanding of the market, I feel like it was definitely a buyer's market versus a seller's market.
Oh yeah, when Lip lands on the Atlanta Reign,
Yeah.
it certainly it fucking feels like it. And
feel like that was
there's
like-
no shame there, but it's just like, yo, what the?
I feel like when Atlanta, like, I feel like that was like that just kicked off everything. It was like,
Oh, yeah.
it was like the first shot. It was like, oh shit,
Uh-huh.
like,
oh, we
like,
playing
oh,
games out
like,
here.
like, yeah, it's like, all right, the West is gonna be real crazy this year.
Yeah.
And then they got Fielder and Vigilant. It's like, what is
Yeah.
Atlanta doing? They're actually building like the Avengers or some shit over there.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. And then
like it.
honestly, like everyone kept shooting. Like Houston also assembled like half of a God squad there. Like Alpha Ye's on Washington, dude. Like
yeah,
it is bizarre.
It's a heavy one, right? But by the way, Alpha Yi is another. I guess not a rookie, right? Fair.
not a rookie,
Yeah.
but yeah. I mean, we were looked at Alpha Yi when we were signing, like the year before when we were like signing when we signed Checkmate, right? Like so, we knew about Alpha Yi and it was like okay. But he like obviously Alfie is going to want to start somewhere.
Yes.
Whereas, like it's like the expectations are a little different. It's like, hey, let's see if we can, we can mold somebody rather than, hey, this is like, we know what Alfie is and like what he provides, right? And it's like, we just wanted, we wanted a third DPS with like the intention of like, hey, you're gonna grow into the slot, and into the starting rotation if you make it.
And another interesting thing is, and okay, like maybe this is cope, but in my mind, like a lot of teams have now like locked in on that 6 player, most 6, some 7 player number.
Sure.
It feels like, yeah, okay, there are economic realities in the league, 6 is the min and whatnot, but it also feels like you actually, like if you are at 8 or 9, that's actually not really effective, right? Like, if you're there, then you almost want 10 so you can internal scrim or whatever, right? Or you want, like, a really good coach like Dallas had with, like, putting Rascal in or whatever. But, like, is it actually the sweet spot? Like the 6-man and then hopefully, like, everybody stays healthy?
I mean, if you have 8 or 9 at that point, you're just denying talent. You can't play that many players, so, like, you're just denying other teams from having access to that talent. Or I feel like at that point that's what you're doing. You're not really optimizing your roster. You're more optimizing your chances of winning by subtracting potential like players from your opponents.
Boston.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think especially in 5v5, like obviously the roster size had to get smaller. You got one tank. And kind of as DPSs they're just, I like this, like I feel like the hard specialist roles have like slowly been getting phased out in terms, like especially for DPS and even for support. You see it, right? Like it's like, okay, you got to pick up main spring and pick up flex support. Like you can't just be, I think the only pure one is like maybe flex support, like is the last like pure, like okay, you can just focus on flex support if you got the mechanics in your Sauna, if you never have to switch like main support. But the other support position is like more fluid. And I think as the league becomes more fluid, there's just like, to have that hero pool, you need playtime. Like that's the only way you're gonna maintain all those heroes, or like that's asked for you, is to have someone that's getting a lot of reps. And so I think as we gravitate towards like you see a lot of like in-game swapping, whereas I think before it's like it was more static. Like you just roll with a comp. It's like, okay, well, we lose with the comp, like that's it. Like there's no plan B, there's no plan C, and like now it's like, okay, it's a game of swaps, right? You see like tank swapping like throughout the match. Like, oh, you start a monkey, then you move to like a Rhino, you move to Sigma, you move to, like it's so much more fluid. I think it just necessitates like concentrating like where you invest more in terms of talent than like, okay, let's have your let's have your off tank specialist. Let's have your hard hit scan specialist. Let's have your only, you only play projectile heroes, or you only play main support. Like I think it's moved to that level where like the expectations of each position has increased year over year. And I think that's why we're at like a more concentrated, like number of players on a team. I mean, and also obviously the budget affects it, right? Like,
sure, of course.
I think, is there any team with 12 players this year? I don't think there is, right?
I don't think so. I think there's some thickies out there, but other than that, even
really
then, it's
just
like,
one,
oof.
right? Really, just Boston? Is it?
Yeah, pretty much.
Boston does not have 12 players though.
No, not 12, but like, I mean, you don't want 12 for sure. Like 10.
I guess the new 12 is 10, right? Yeah, because that's 5v5. Yeah. 10 is the new 12.
Let's
You're
see.
right.
Eric is scrolling through. Let's see. No.
Numbers, man. You crunching.
Toronto has a bunch of players as well, I guess. But yeah.
True. I mean, it's a bunch, but
Seven. Ooh.
Yeah.
Seven's a bunch now.
Yeah. It just looked a lot. No, but yeah. I mean, if there's a ball meta, we'll see if they get another one. But yeah, that's interesting for sure. Like also just like thinking about, are there any weak spots? Of course, like there's a new hero theoretically. Like some
theoretically, there just will be a new hero,
right? Yeah. What I mean is theoretically, in terms of like theoretically, you could run into a situation where your starter can't cover that hero, or is like really not that good.
It's a weird hero.
To the same degree, like Wrecking Ball works, right? Like some teams have just said, okay, like if X hero happens,
we go 30 day.
We go 30 day, right?
Yeah.
Is it? Have you located a hole?
I mean, or you have your DPS swap,
right?
Because I think in the initial, I mean, you look at Terra, right? Or you look at like, I think initially, like, it's not about how good you are. When a hero releases, it's about how good are you at learning a new hero and picking up quickly and becoming competent on it. It's not necessarily like mastering the hero, which is like that's like towards the tail end of like the
life cycle of it.
Yeah, exactly. Like playoff time, it's like, okay, have you mastered the hero? But in the beginning, it's like I think Kariko players have gotten so much better in the off season.
Yeah.
Like because they've mastered, like some of the players have truly mastered Kiriko, and others like, okay, well, Kiriko's not in the hero pool, actually, but maybe they were decent at it in the beginning. And so I think DPS players are like, DPS I think is the most demanding position. Like a starting DPS is like the most demanding position in the league, I would say. In terms of raw mechanics, and I think having a mechanics edge, learning a new hero is like could be pretty important. It's like, so I think our plan at least is like, I think our backline's strong enough that they should be able to learn. Between RuPaul and Trong, one of them should be able to learn the new hero to like a decent degree. But like worst case scenario, like like we've had Checkmate play tank before. Like, we'll have him play support.
That's true.
I mean, also he like unironic, like most of these DPS players are. I mean, most players in the league period are like top 500.
Yeah, they can play off roll. Yeah,
they're top 500 every role. And it's like, we'll see. We'll cross that bridge when we get there. Hopefully, we don't get there. But we have thought about it. And we've communicated. Like we've talked to Checkmate, like, hey, like that's also why we brought Sauna. It's like if Sauna needs to step in for Checkmate and Checkmate plays flex support or main support, if like it's a new hero that it gives us the option. Not saying that's going to be the option we go with, but it's potential.
Okay, we're a little in Camp Moon. We're dabbling, we're experimenting. I'm liking what I'm hearing. It makes for an interesting little season, right?
It also makes perfect sense to say, like,
of course, yeah.
Also, like, engaging Reddit piss-off mode. Flex DPS players are the best players in the game, bar none. And to double sign those positions is just the best in terms of being flexible if you can't have, like, a backup for every role. And I feel like teams that have to sign a second tank as their 6th and they don't get a 7th, that's a hard one. I honestly, like, even the flex support situation is probably a little overkill. It really depends on the team, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's
you could make it work without. I mean, Dallas won a championship, right? And
Yes.
They didn't really play double flex support. They just like, okay, we're a rush team, and that's what we're gonna do.
Yeah.
And it's fine. And I think there were double flex teams that, like, we'll see. I think it'll be interesting to see if any teams continue the double flex experiment. I think if any team's gonna do it, it's got to be Atlanta, right? Like, you got Fielder and Vigilante, and if they can make it work and they can find, but it's like that would be their unique system, because I don't think any other team has like like the
That's
double flex support that strong.
It's honestly like a little bit like embarrassment of riches situation, right?
Yeah.
Like it's
Oh, they got Chio just waiting. Like, if you want to Lucio again, like, I'm here. I'm waiting. Like,
Yeah.
Just in case. No big deal.
Just in case.
Yeah, I think the story goes that Vigilante was actually probably pretty important in order to attract the top tier talent. Therefore, like, you're probably not going to sell him. You're probably not going to say no to Fielder. So you just have like arguably two top 5 flex supports in your team. That's that, right? Yeah.
You kind of brought this up a little earlier, and I wanted to kind of, at least get this on record is a little strong, but to kind of see if there was any interest elsewhere. You brought up Gravy and Gunba.
Yeah.
Was there a decision early on that you guys wanted to stick it out? Was this a contractual thing, or did you guys kind of play the market?
So they were signed on 1 year, so their contracts were up at the end of the year, so end of December. And so, we decided to talk, and it's like, like, Gumba's contract was up. We hadn't finished negotiations yet. We were just talking, and like, as I do every offseason, we look at, same with players, same with coaches.
Sure.
Depending on the contract length, right? You're looking at options, seeing what's out there. And so I was looking at options, and I was like, hey, like, you can look at options as well. I think it's normal. Like, most coaches look at their options, right? Like, maybe not publicly, but at least privately or
right.
Discreetly, they'll reach out to fielders to field teams, like, hey, are you, what are you thinking about for head coach, or like whatever. So I think it's just normal. It's just he made a tweet about it, and other coaches, do it through
agents or whatever,
like private channels. Yeah, that's all. I don't think there's nothing. There's no like bad blood or anything. It was just like, okay, our contract's out. We haven't settled on a new contract. Like, in the interim, like, let's just see, for both the, let's just see what's out there. So that was all.
Oh, makes sense. I did kind of want to get a little bit of spotlight on somebody who I think came into last season very, I even think underrated is probably an understatement. Someone has been a breakout star, I would say, after his 2022 performance. From a staff perspective, how was this up to expectations? Were you guys just like floored that you have such a a talent, leading the squad?
Yeah, I mean, so I think with how fast we progressed into being a good team, it was like, and they're in year 2 of their contracts, it's like, this is our power spec year. Like, this is our, like,
Feels like it.
let's invest, and see if we can't win something. Can't win a tournament or like win the league, or like, let's invest and make the best squad that we can, while we have someone. Because, like, I don't know, when's the next time we're gonna get when's the next time Mayhem's gonna get Hyperflex, like, tank. Like, there's not that many. Like, there's not that many, and who knows? So, like, let's capitalize on what we have now. And we got RuPaul, we got Checkmate, we got Ham. Like, it's a solid core. Like, let's add 2 starters and, like, 2 new signings, and see where, like, how far we can go in the playoffs. So I think it changed. The thing it changed was just like, okay, like, we should really, like, try to get it right this offseason, because like, we don't know, like, you don't know what your team's going to look like year to year.
Course,
like, when you're going to be able to, like, when are we going to have a chance to have, sign like a top rookies and like make it work out. So you don't know. So I think it was just, we're done rebuilding. Like, let's invest and see where we go.
It's a punchy team.
You have been with this organization for a hot minute. Is this the best team that you've ever build?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say it's easily the most complete team, and I think that would make it the best team. I think our best regular season performance was the first year we had the half a runaway, but we didn't win anything. Unfortunately, we had a great regular season record though, but we didn't win anything.
Had like
I
a
think we
deep
got
run in melee, right?
yeah, we lost a shock in the melee, and then that was it. I don't think we did well in any of the other tournaments. But yeah, I think who knows, like what's gonna happen this year, but at least on paper and how I feel about the team, like I think this is definitely the best team
Mm.
that we've ever assembled here, for sure.
Well, you have to redefine what like a successful season that looks like, because you said like, okay, with deep tournament runs and whatnot, there's less of those now, right? Like it's 2 and then
That's true. Yeah, so deep mid-season run and
There you go.
and deep deep postseason run, and then I wish we had more tournaments. That's I don't know. I really like the having stage tournaments rather than just one mid-season, one end of season.
Right. Do you think like, okay, so some people might say, well, why not then care very much about Pro Am? That's a tournament, right?
It is, but
It is. It is a
really,
tournament of all time.
Yeah, it is one of the tournaments.
What makes it like feel less deserving? Is it the format? Is it the participants? Is it like that it isn't Overwatch League? What's the unimpressive part about it?
I feel like for the West, it just like wasn't. I understand for the East why it was needed, and I think the West it was more just like, okay, because the East has it, we're kind of just gonna have it in the West as well,
right?
Because the East doesn't have enough teams, and so it's like, Param makes sense. Like you got to add, it's more fun that way or more entertaining that way than just watching the same teams play each other like 50 times a season. Like it's like it's not super exciting. But for the West, it was like, I don't know, like we don't need, like I think it's clear. I mean, maybe not now because that like Eternals lost in the World Cup trials, right? Like, I think it's more entertaining now, but like for not the right reasons, I guess. Like, like it's more of whereas I think it's fine. Like we have enough teams. We could have just done without the param here, but it's more like the only thing this changes is like, okay, maybe some of the lower ranked OWL teams like lose to a contenders team, and like we can have like a.
Are you scared? That
might happen to you. We can have like a good laugh.
Is the team with merit someone in Chorong scared?
Look.
Come on.
The thing is, like a best of 3 is a gnarly format, right? Like you probably still make it out of groups, but like you can win lose a match, right? Against some even lesser OWL team would feel pretty bad at this point, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's just I'm not worried. I mean, I think that's a worry for the other, some of the other teams, but. Right. I mean, I will be worried if we lose, but from
this a clip.
Go to me right now. Like I'm fine. Like we'll be all right. Like I'm not worried. I just think we have enough teams in the West. Like we could have just done a normal OWL season and like if you told me choose between a Param and stage tournaments for the West, I'd like do stage tournaments every time. Like sorry, contenders teams. Like like grow up and then come to OWL or something.
True.
Like that's.
I have this theory that right now nobody's really caring too much. You can see it like open scrim rooms. Like if the code's gone, then the code's gone. Like X amount of blocks. Yeah, maybe we start now. Blah blah blah. That type of stuff. I think like as soon as the games start, everyone's going to play like they're defending their firstborn from the orcs.
Yeah.
Like it's like I feel like then everyone's going to be like, oh damn. If we had 3 blocks like 3 weeks earlier or whatever, we could have won this. And there will be a lot of ego protection going on, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's all fun and games, and then the season starts, and then everyone's nose to the grindstone, right? So like it's it'll be like that for sure. I agree.
It is an interesting one. I think there are, at least from the outset, I think there are some gems coming out from Pro-Am, but like, yeah, I would definitely agree with you. Yeah, like it's, we had Gauntlet for a reason. Maybe we, put the resources that we're doing here into a Gauntlet, give the contenders teams like that one big prize to fight for. Because again, the Pro-Am doesn't have like a ton of stakes, right? It is a great opportunity for contenders teams to like get on the main stage, test their mettle against the Overwatch League teams. But are we really gas on the pedal? It's not the same patch,
I mean, I feel like at the end of the day, the problem is just like, are any contender teams better than like Valiant, New York, and Eternal?
Pretty much.
And that's really all. Like, I feel like that's all you're gonna learn from the Pro-Am, and that's that it is what it is. And I think whoever wins it, it's gonna be like whatever.
Wow.
It's not gonna. There's no way it's gonna be a contenders team. I'll tell you that. At least in the West. Even in the East, I mean, there's some. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah.
I think it's more just like, hey, are these teams like
how competitive are they really?
Who are the bottom teams in the West? Like, is really what this tournament is gonna like. People are gonna learn from this tournament. That's what. What are the expectations for those? The bottom teams.
Is there a world where like some of those mid-season pickups might be inspired by contenders players like maybe overperforming a little bit?
Maybe, but probably at like the lower. I just assume like like if you get beat by a contenders team as an AL team, then you're gonna look at the players that they have and be like, hey, is there what are the upgrades here? But if you're beating them, it's like I don't know. I could be maybe, but I think from where I'm standing, like it's unlikely that we look at because we already looked at the North American contenders in the offseason. It was like we didn't see at least of the pool of players that we could actually sign that were of age, we didn't see anything there that was super interesting. So I don't know. We'll see. Maybe someone breaks out. I don't know. But I guess I'm not super hopeful that we're gonna see like a breakout star that doesn't, like we already know Tree's like a really good player.
Everybody knows. Yeah. It's not a surprise, guys. Tree's on the radar, okay? I think everybody's got, tabs on this.
Yeah, Tree's next up. Everyone knows. Let's just see, like let's see him do it against AL teams in a match and like see what happens. Like can he carry his team to victory, or can he just, can he solo carry a map or something like that, or a series? So yeah.
Look, I don't claim to keep up on contenders Korea a lot right now, or much less like other regions, less smaller regions. But is Tree like really like the talent coming? Like the no, okay, I'm not saying like he has proper level talent. I'm saying like proper was very clearly the big guy coming, right? We saw him like 3 years ago. Then he was there, right? Is Tree like the best in class in terms of contenders talent that can't be signed because of eligibility?
I think he's one of the most complete DPS players, I'd say, that North America's ever produced. Yeah, I'm not confident saying that. So we'll see. I mean, if Sugar Free has like Speedily was the last one I can remember that was like very hyped. Sugar Free would probably have more hype if he was still active. He was like competing in Overwatch this whole time, but he took a break. So now people, he's in like the Patty Fan situation where like if Patty Fan continued to play at Overwatch, like everyone would be like super hyped about Patty Fan, and then if he then had to performed really well, then different story, right? Not that Patty Fan didn't perform well, it was just like you know what I mean, like but yeah, I mean I'd say Tree's the most. I don't know. It's weird saying he'd be the proper of like the West, but I don't know. I think it's too early to say that. But easily one of the most like sought, like hyped up. I guess you say hyped up, but like hyped up prospects from the West in a long time.
How would he compare to other talents like in the East from that on your radar?
That's hard. Ask me again after the Pro-Am.
Right.
Yeah, ask me again after the Pro-Am because it's hard to say. It's hard to say. I need to see him in action against AL talent, and then I can, but like he's ranked for us. Like I've seen him. Like he's really good. But yeah, need to catch up on. I feel like every year in Korea, it's like after the off season, it's like who are the new players that are coming out of the Korea region. But also remember Korea has an age restriction,
right,
for pro rank. So I would say Tree's probably better than all, just based on the age restriction.
right.
Because if they're of age and could be signed for L and weren't,
True.
Chances are Tree's probably better than them.
Yeah. Is there any, like, you said you got your top picks for the most part, so like I guess there's no real real issue in naming, but is there like a player where you think like, oh, that's interesting that nobody picked him up? Because for me it was Top Dragon.
Top Dragon, Alien, probably. I figured
you're so base for saying
that. I figured somebody would take a chance and like, at least one of the teams would be like, hey, like let's see if this guy's like, is the next like MN3 or some shit. Like I don't know. That's that in my head, that's probably the other one. I'm trying to think of. I probably forgot somebody, right? Like,
I didn't hate Probe. I thought Probe was okay. I know Spectra's floating around. I don't know age-wise if that's even eligible.
He is. Spectra wasn't as surprising to me. Like, I think it's completely reasonable that like teams looked at him. I'm sure he got trials.
Sure.
So it was like he maybe needs another year to develop, or like he's, we'll see. Trying to think.
Pull up the old list. Working through it.
I mean, Reiner is not. I don't think Reiner was like a health issue, not a matter of like.
Right. Yeah, makes sense.
That Toronto wasn't going to pick him up. I'm pretty sure. So.
Was Sanguinar on the board at all?
What is it, Sanguinar? Like, I feel like there's some like random connection between Sanguinar and Mayhem for some reason, when there's never been like. Yeah. There's never been a connection between Sanguinar and Mayhem, and like every year it's like every year someone mentions Sanguinar in connection with Mayhem. I'm like, where
does this come from?
Like, I mean, I know where it came from, but like, it wasn't real, like it wasn't real. So no, I'm not super. I don't know.
To you?
Huh?
To you?
True. Yeah.
That's to you is like the Gebushi of this season. I feel like.
Oh yeah. Like, he should be in, and then he
mega hyped. Like all the basically, if you have a football Twitter PFP, you're somehow forced to say to you is snubbed. Very much like Gebushi was hyped.
Yeah. I mean, there's the Gargo rumor, right? But that's not a surprise. That's more of like I think there's more surprising pickups than surprising like people that didn't get picked up.
Yeah.
And Quartz, I mean, he's not in the league because he didn't want to be in the league. Like, he wanted to finish school. So yeah, I think it was more like people that got picked up that are surprised. There's more surprising player pickups than there are like people forgot about a player.
Yeah,
true.
Yeah, that's one aspect where.
Oh, sorry, Iris.
Oh yeah,
that's
true. Yeah.
Iris. Yeah, Iris.
Iris. Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
that would be my one. Like, okay. I thought he had a pretty great year. Not sure what happened. Like, there's some teams that could definitely have used him that I felt like were, I mean, unless he was asking for like a lot of money, like I felt like he could fit on a few teams, even as maybe a third option or second flex support, even like that. Yeah, I'd say Iris probably.
Like, the reason I ask is because when we have like we have this gatekeeper system theoretically or practically in place, right? Like, if you GMs don't say you can play on my team, you have no chance to become a world champion in this esport, right? Or didn't for the longest time. Now there is this option, right? And it will be interesting to me and I agree with everyone saying there was nobody obviously snubbed, right? Like, at best they're like maybe a slight upgrade over some starters. I will say, of course, like some teams have certain restrictions about like they can't even pay housing, so how would you immigrate a player? Okay, fair. Like we're not optimizing for the absolute best players everywhere, right? But like the differences would not be earth-shattering in that way. Now, if the Pro-Am was to produce like, let's say, a top 4 contenders finish, or the much worse, like if the APAC region was to produce a contenders team that ends up in playoffs, then there's something in the gate at the gatekeeper level that hasn't recognized something about Overwatch that went through all radars that we're currently setting up and somehow have convinced. Of course, super low probability, I agree. I also want to establish that I don't think like any one of you guys is messing up terribly in the GM scale, right? Yeah. I think like if that happens, there was something in this team that nobody saw, and that's exciting.
Well, I think if it's from the APAC, I think it just we didn't import enough Koreans, right?
Yeah,
right. Like that's what that would mean. Like the talent was there, and we, I think a lot of teams we have more budget teams, so like they're pivoting towards like, oh, no visas, right? So I think it's just the financial landscape. If that's the case, I really doubt it because they also nerfed that region by not letting underage players play from on Eastern teams. So I think that I'd be shocked if that would have been like, okay, so of the existing pool of players they could sign, like we missed out on a lot, or maybe 1 or 2, or 3, and I think we're pretty good at like picking up the top Korean talent as a league, I would say. So that would be shocking to me. One other player that I thought that fit, like given there's a lot of Western teams or a lot more Western players this year. Vega, because I think he is eligible. I thought he would be picked up by some team. Right? Or is Vega not eligible?
Let's double check that. 16 May 2006.
So he's end eligible, of May. Right? 17?
Yeah, end of May he turned 17, and then
because limit 17. Yeah.
So
Vega probably, just given the type of teams we have in the league and the number of like potential teams that could have used like a main support, Western main support.
Look, I'm so cynical about this that I don't even think it's impossible that a handshake agreement exists and that this kid has a contract as he turns 17 because nobody wants to pay him beforehand, or that type of deal. Because like,
you're talking about the teams that would be interested don't want to pay him until he turns 8. Oh, okay.
Could maybe. I'm not saying that's the case, but like that I could totally see.
Put it past. Yeah. There's some cynical budget lords out there that
sure,
it's
no, I'm not even going to break it, but there's some interesting ones on the horizon.
True.
Or an interesting one.
Yeah. Okay. That's interesting to hear. Yeah, no, I think that's the interesting part for which I will be watching. I'm basically like gold digging for the unexpected like talent. Like I feel like also very often like what happens is like someone just for like 2 days, like all neurons are firing at top speed and like they are having the performance of their life, bait someone into signing them, and then you never see anything from them again, right? Like at the same time, I will say there in the past have been players where everyone was like, yeah, that's kind of a decent average player, and then it's lip, like it's like he was nothing special or super special and blossom right?
Yeah, I mean, there's like Ons, like like that. I don't feel like anyone expected him to put up the numbers he did that season. Like that was like a legitimately crazy performance, and then he didn't fall. Like, so I think for Proper to have, I was talking about like this with like some coaches, like I was like, for Proper to have a better performance they did last year would be like ridiculous, right? But like I think that's the expectation, right? Like he's gonna improve, he's gonna be even better, he's gonna find it. I don't know how, like I don't know what the next gear looks like for Proper, but like that would be because he already had like a absurd year.
Yeah,
like short of the only thing he didn't do is carry his team to win the entire grand finals. That's like the only thing he didn't do last year.
And he almost did it too, yeah.
Yeah. Like I just don't like the level he played at day in and day out. Like was just ridiculous. So if he has like a better year this year, like I just don't I don't know. I don't even see how could be possible. But
Look,
we'll have to see.
Here's a fun one where you have to evaluate the social lunacy and the level of proper that he can play at. Is he in your mind, like taking into account how much this league will probably experience voter fatigue? Is he still the top candidate for MVP next year?
Yeah, I said it before. I think he's this league's like Jokic. Like it's just like people just get bored and like just find any way to say there's another MVP. But I think as long as he's playing at that level, like I think it just he has to be right. I think he's still the favorite to be MVP. Right now, I think he has a great team. He's a better team.
Yeah,
I think strength wise this year than he had last year. And they play around him like it's like he's calling like the style that he plays like it's very much like he plays like a superstar. Like he gets the resources, he gets the team plays around him. Like he's set up to succeed. So I think, it might be boring, but I think like there's something to be said when like excellence is just we were just bored about like Nikola Jokic being so fucking good. Like people were just absolutely bored out of their minds and just like he's still good. Like doesn't matter how bored, like just because it's not something new doesn't mean like he's still not like an MVP.
Is that analog kind of work the same way with Jokic, where it's like, are there the same criticisms that I can already kind of hear Reddit spinning up, where it's just like, oh, if you put Kevster in the Shock, then he would be good too. It's the team. It's not him.
Well, I think it's like it's kind of like, oh, you put someone else in, like there would be like, no, I literally heard, I had an argument with my players last year. They were like,
okay,
oh yeah, it's like because Kevster's team's like not as good. I was like, okay, so you put Kevster in Shock, and you could say or like, because I thought Glads had a better roster than Shock last year. So I was like, I was like, I think you put Proper on Glads, he does even, like I think it works even better for the argument. It's like you put Kevster on Shock, like he's doing what Proper's doing. Like I don't know, man. Like that's so yeah. I mean, I think there's a bit of that. But I mean, everyone's entitled to their own opinion. I think it's fun at the end of the day. Just my opinion that I think as long as Proper keeps it up, like I'd be hard pressed to that anyone's like comes close.
I'm a little scared discussion. for that actually. That dude, this team is ridiculous. Like the Shock team.
Yeah.
And if we're getting a ball meta, it wouldn't be the first time where like a hero just stays ridiculous for way too long, right? And the problem is ball feels like the ball gap is the widest of any tank hero in the league. Like there's like maybe 5 people that can even be good on this hero, right? Like, and otherwise
Ball's a really hard hero. Right? Ball is a really hard hero, and yeah, I mean it's a not good ball. They don't make ball look overpowered. Like they're dying when they roll in. Everything. A really good ball, it's like they're just literally slamming into you over and over again. Full HP, runs away with like 1 HP. It's like it's just nonsense. Like you're just like it's so hard to deal with, right? So yeah, we'll see. Hopefully, I mean, I would like there to be comp diversity throughout the year, but who knows? Who knows what it's actually going to look like? But I think for like league entertainment and being competitive, I hope it's not like a hard ball meta would just be kind of, I mean, be great for Shock, right? Or any team that has a ball specialist, but I think it would just be kind of sucky from like a, if you don't have a really good ball player or if your team doesn't really mesh well with like ball comps. And not having, if that's like hard meta has been like, there's nothing else you can play. You just have to play ball. I think that's kind
too
of
good
boring.
not to. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that'd be pretty boring. I'd rather value like, hey, like like London can get away, like they can play Ryan because they're really good at Ryan, right? Like they have their own style, and I think the league's at its best and teams are at their best when they can find a solution that isn't just mirror whatever the comp is. So yeah.
Agreed there. Agreed.
Have you
I gotta say
play?
it is.
So really
Say
quick,
again?
have you scrimmed widely? Have you scrimmed most of the teams?
Yeah, we scrimmed a lot of the Korean teams or the teams that have a lot of Korean players. Because most of our players were in Korea until recently. So we basically only scrimmed like Korean, like APAC based teams.
Okay.
At least physically, like we scrimmed Boston, we scrimmed, teams that had a lot of players in Korea or were scrimming
Maybe a
in Korea.
Houston.
Yeah, Houston, Shock.
Sure.
Who else do we scrim?
Drop the coats.
Dallas. Yeah. I don't know. I forgot. I think we scrimmed Glads once or twice as well. It's on Charge. But yeah.
Oh, shit. Charge has a team? Crazy.
Wait, are they not? Oh. Okay, it's okay. I didn't leak anything, so it's fine.
No, you didn't.
No, they have a team. Yeah, the big league.
I was like, I didn't think I said any names, so we're good. We're good.
Yeah.
I mean, it is interesting to see how the rest of some of these teams. I mean, we still have teams in NA that have yet to, make any public moves.
Yeah. That is, yeah.
We do have a tournament coming up, so I would expect those in the coming hours.
Need the social media interns to step it up, like step up their game and release the rosters.
Need some more unregistered Hypercam 2 silly videos.
Do the disguised toast.
Yeah.
Announcement where they just have it in MS Paint. Why not?
Yeah, why not?
Dude,
There's just something about doing it scuffed.
There would be something in me that would find it very funny if one of those lower paying teams like just brought Swoosh out with a palm tree, like it just shows up without announcement. Like how much worse can it really be?
Yeah. Or just do no announcement. Just show up to the match. Like, okay, this is the
Honestly, kind of a power move. I'm not gonna lie. That's kind of crazy.
Yeah, I feel like the league would, and actually,
Probably.
well, Sean just tweeted that there's no mandate announcements, but I don't know. Like, if they truly don't announce it, would the league just announce like the rosters ahead of time, or would they actually let you, like, they're just let the Valiant load in and just like what, like we'll see.
If they knew what was good for them, they would, because everybody wants to see who's playing. Everybody wants to, the roster announcement. It's on the broadcast, so it would be kind of incentivized to, let it rock.
I don't even know if some of those teams even have like staff, like PR staff. Is it just like the CEO going to some kid on Etsy, like, please make me a graphic so I can announce my roster? What's like, I don't know what the
Fiverr.com.
Yeah, I don't know.
Just do it in paint at the point. Just lean into it. Like, people already know your budget. Like, just embrace it, like at that point, like what's the other alternative? Like, pretend that you're not, but you know what I mean? Like, the alternative is pretend you're not budget, even though you are budget. And it's like, that's who cares
knows your budget.
Like, just lean into it, just MS Paint, Valiant, just have a player leak a scrim code, and that's your roster. I don't know.
Yeah.
Something. Actually, I already know what Valiant are scrimming. I have no idea if Valiant are scrimming.
True.
I think there was a leak, right? Like a code leak.
For Valiant?
Yeah.
Then Valiant would have players leak, right? Like, they would. I don't think they've. Yeah.
I think there's a full leak of the roster out there, but I'm not. Once again, I'm 100%. Here's something about me. I suck at my job if your team sucks. Okay, I don't care enough to find out. Like, this, it's unfortunate.
You leave it to the. How many leakers do we have around nowadays? We've got like a legion of them.
Right.
That's true.
We've got like all sorts of people coming out of the woodwork. Like,
tell you what, like, managing all of these Twitter accounts for me is a lot of work.
I think the worst part is the Reddit is just filled with like random leakers now. It's just like, oh, this is like
this one kid just came out of nowhere and knew everything. Like, he's some fucked up AI oracle just trained on all scrim codes. Like,
he's just been in the training range for the last 5 years, willing his way into like every Discord group until he finally has like a clear picture of like everything. Like, he just, because I mean, honestly, to be a leaker, like, you just got to know like one pro, really, or like two pros. Like, you got to know like one APAC pro, one Western pro, and then you'll get all the juice, probably.
You're mainlining that shit.
Yeah. Like they talk all the time, and I think a lot of the rumors are funny because like the ones that are wrong are usually like because there's always a bit of like I don't want to say fog of war because it's not like a war game or anything, but like there was this fog, like a haze of uncertainty over certain things, and like players are always like they hear the first tidbit and they're just like, okay, that's exactly what's happening. Like there's no verification, nothing, and then they just pass it on their friends, and then all of a sudden their friends pass it on to like Leak Mafia or something, and all of a sudden you have this like rumor that was like, okay, we didn't verify anything. Like, yeah, you got it from like a source inside the league, but your source is like a player that, you know, he doesn't care. Like, there's no credibility or anything. Like, you know, they don't care about like verifying it or anything. It's just okay. This is the roster. Like, this is what I heard. Right.
Got it from the motherfucking limo driver.
Yeah. Oh yeah. What was that? Was that the back in the day? There was someone like at the Titans airport or like in the Vancouver airport that was like, "Hey, I think I just saw like the Titans land." Or something. Like, that was like I don't was that real? Was that real? Like to this day, I don't remember if that was real or like some crackpot
thinly veiled
conspiracy. Yeah, like some weird like clout attention like getting Reddit post about like how they worked at the airport and saw like who was it? They saw Flowervin, I think was what was the post. I don't remember that.
Could be.
It
was
something ridiculous.
That's some deep Overwatch iceberg lore that if you know, source the Reddit comment because sources are hard to come by these days. Wasn't there something like not at the beginning of the offseason regarding like Atlanta where somebody's like, yeah, Atlanta's doing X, and it's like sources, it's like I made it up. Like what?
Yeah.
What?
I don't know. I do remember the clown, like the hawk, you know, like when I someone knew that it was gonna be mostly Koreans, and it was just like the clown in the breach, like they're outside about to breach a room, and just like a bunch of soldiers and just like clown, and I was like, okay, like they know something's going on at Atlanta.
It's gonna be an interesting one.
I would say just to encourage, you know, sometimes those people turn into journalists. And I feel like League Mafia improved a lot. I want to like commend them on their improvement.
Collective, or like maybe only one like the most responsible person took over the account.
Yes, whatever the mechanism it is, I want to commend that. Like,
because I'm pretty sure it's multiple people. Because they're posting like I remember they were posting like tier lists, and there's like they just posted a reply of like, no, I don't think this is the tier list. Like this is my tier list, and it was like, bro, it's the same account. Like, what are you talking about? Like, get your they couldn't figure out like their preseason power rankings.
Their tweet deck straight, guys. Come on.
Yeah.
Amateur hour over here.
Sometimes it's K-pop admin and sometimes it's Ice Spice admin. You know, that's how it goes.
It's true.
Hold on, I gotta go to the bathroom. I'll be right back though.
You're good. You're good. It's funny that, you know, it's funny that like leaks are the topic of discussion because it's just so. Like Albert said, it's very like shot from the hip. It's like you hear one little like one drop in the pond. It's just like so and so's going here for sure. Bang.
I think that is true, but I think like especially if you have a lot of people that you have the ability to cross check a little bit. In the past, of course, there were other things like I would be surprised like if there was a lot of like let's go to the teams and ask. Halo definitely did that for a lot of teams. For instance, like that's just a different, more thorough style. I imagine it's probably much harder for those guys that want to stay anonymous to hit up the officials, you know, the general managers and whatnot. And yeah, I don't know. It's like considering like we're now in much less serious territory. The contract structures have changed. The reception of the community has changed. It's a little bit less harmful than it used to be, even though I still remain that it's not great, especially like some announcements should probably just be left to the player, especially in case of retirement. But theoretically, in terms of journalism, that's all fair play, right? Like it's in public interest. It's a person in public interest. That's just like the bread and butter of journalism. So there's nothing really problematic at all in this. It's all in the method.
Hyper tangentially related.
I'm back.
Are you familiar, Albert, with the story of Korean Typhoon? Have you heard?
Is that the
this
team that didn't make it?
Nope. A team full of basically former Owl pros: Arrow, Valentine, Finale, Muse, Peppy, who is a rookie, Aiden, and Simple. They didn't make it through Open Division. Yep. Well, I guess the Open qualifiers for Korea contenders, which I thought was very interesting.
Yeah, not a good case.
No,
if they want to, make it back to the league. So
definitely not ideal. And it was just kind of an interesting kind of sub tangent regarding something that Yiska said, where it was just like, oh yeah, one of the big like kind of plot points that we've had going back a couple shows was that like, oh, like is the talent well drying up a little bit? Is it, is this like the best we're gonna get? And I don't know if that's necessarily the case. You should expect a team like this to advance, no?
Yeah, I mean, I think Overwatch is one of those, at least from my experience, that it kind of values, or it doesn't value like the veterans as much as they do like new talent, like mechanics.
Sure, yeah.
Right? I feel like it's interesting in that sense. Also, I mean, might be a fact that just because Overwatch 2 is like a new game. I mean, it's the same game, but it's 5v5 is a different dynamic than 6v6. And so, yeah, I don't know. But it is tough because I think that team is on paper like you'd expect. Yeah, you would expect that team to qualify. I agree. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how to feel about it. I don't know. Better luck next time, I guess. Next pro-am.
I think there's still some unclarity. There is some still things to be decided regarding. I think there's one more slot for the contender season for Korea to kind of like officially kick off. I know that, at least like Wikipedia official, Gen G apparently, they still have to sort out their academy team. If that's happening, there's still a slot up for grabs. That's TBD.
Yeah. If Gen G drop out, there's a slot. Right. Okay.
So, could be interesting. But obviously getting a little bit long in the tooth. Don't want to take up too much of your evening. But did want to give you a little bit of a platform to kind of speak to some of the Mayhem fans and, let us know maybe if there's anything, content wise cooking. Obviously you guys are opening up Pro-Am versus the San Francisco Shock, but just want to give the last little bit to you.
Yeah, I mean, I think I said this last year. But, again, I think we're going to have a really good team. I think we're better than last year. And, we have a lot to live up to, right? Because last year we did pretty well. Like
so?
Us and Glads finished the same at the end of the year, which is kind of ridiculous. But yeah, so eighth last year, or tied seventh, however you want to think about it. But I think for this year, like, expectations are much higher, like it's a different team. Like this is a team of vets and players that, we have high expectations for, that we're going to improve on where we were last year. And hopefully we can live up, to those expectations, to those standards. I think, making it to the midseason madness, I mean, it's not going to be easy, right? Like I think the slots are very limited for the midseason tournament, but making that tournament at least, and then having a deep run, those are the goals, and then having a deep run the postseason. So really happy with how the offseason turned out. Happy with the players we picked up. Excited for this season. And hope the fans are too. Also, jersey size is a little large, so maybe order a size down or something if you buy anything from the Mayhem shop.
Fair.
That's solid advice. That's shit people don't talk about. That you got to know.
I got my jersey today, and I was like, oh, this is a bit large. So yeah.
Well, thank you again for coming on and letting us pick your brain about the off season, all that stuff. I think Vice City is looking quite competitive, if I do say so. Yiska, anything coming down the pipeline for you?
I mean, always plotting. I realized I will probably put out Tasmo tomorrow. Okay. That's all done and ready to release. Didn't make it today, but by the time that you're watching this, the Tasmo interview is probably releasing pretty much at the same time.
What do you say about me?
I mean, considering like he's in APAC, I don't think he thought too much about the Mayhem.
Got other pink teams to worry about, apparently.
Yep.
Is he moving to APAC? I assume he's not.
Just like for a couple of weeks.
Oh, okay. Just to set up everything, make sure they're.
Yep. And then
The
Deer is
accommodations
over,
are
right?
correct. Yeah. All right.
Alrighty. Episode 287 is in the books. Like and subscribe. Do all that fun stuff. Support the show. Support the Mayhem. And we'll see you next week for maybe some Pro-Am discussion-ronies. So till then, see ya.
All right.